Hey, how you doing? Welcome back. We got an exciting episode here. Kind of a impromptu, unannounced engine attempt to start, and also doing some work on the clutch master cylinder and installing the clutch and the brake master cylinders and a couple other little things. So hang on, here we go. So here we're working on the clutch master cylinder rebuild. And, putting some brake fluid on the seal here and the little backup plate just to get some lubrication on there. Now lubing up the main piston and inserting it into the body there. Make sure it's protruding through the cylinder, the seal back there. Now we're putting that cupped washer on the push rod and sliding on the boot, dust cover boot. And we'll start the jam nut here on the threads, and then we'll put the fork on after that. Yeah, here comes the fork. Just get everything kind of started in place. Now here I'm turning the boot inside out to make it easier to put the snap ring in for that cupped washer there. I want to make sure you get that cupped washer on the right direction. The indented cup part goes towards the end of that nub there. So in the next step, we're going to be installing the snap ring. And this is the one that came with the kit, the rebuild kit, and it has a squared off type of wire that they used on that. The groove inside the body is a rounded groove, and the spring clip that was in my cylinder when I took it apart was a rounded kind of wire that they used, so it would fit snugly in that groove. I chose to use there's the actual one that was in it when I started working on it. So that I chose to use that one, reuse that one instead of the kind of squared off one, because I was afraid the one that had the squared off might have a tendency to slip out of the groove. Anyway, so just pay attention to stuff like that. If you see something odd, and give it some thought before you put it back together. So you want that cupped washer to sit down against the flange inside that bore, and then that leaves just enough room to get that snap ring in place. Here I am snapping it in. And it's really hard to see here, but earlier on we had slipped in that backing plate and the seal, and it's like a chevron seal that has a V in it, and the V should be facing up, facing you right now. If the flat side's facing you, it's in wrong, so you gotta turn it around. And that big nut cap that goes on the end has a sharp edge, leading edge on it that fits into that chevron and makes a snug fit for the seal. So just double check that seal has the V facing out where you can see it. And here's that cap that goes on the end, and lubricating up the leading edge of it where it's going to mate with that seal so that there's no binding or sticking when it gets down in there. So you put the spring in, make sure that little stopper's on the end of the spring, and then slide it on in, and then run the cap down. And you check for freedom of movement. Everything should move nicely. Now I'm turning that boot back right side out so that it's got a little extension on the end of it that snaps into a little groove on that shaft of the body. All right, we're getting there. Now we're just going to put on the reservoir. There's a washer, and the hollow nut allows brake fluid to travel through the center of it. So we're going to lube this up. Again, I just use brake fluid for all these places. Slide everything onto a screwdriver in the right order, and then just kind of jiggle it until it falls through the hole. And then go ahead and get it started, and then snug it up. This is obviously a nylon or plastic type reservoir, so you don't want to put tons of torque on it, but you do want to snug it up good so that it doesn't leak where it contacting the housing. Give it a good snug. This is the float that sits on top of the fluid level, and then the cap. Alright, that thing's about ready to install. Well, here we have the original fuel filter that came on the rig, and I'd kind of like to be able to use this. It's not in the best shape, got a lot of rust and corrosion, and it's full of crap inside the glass bowl, but these are pretty cool. They have these on airplanes, so I'm going to try to make use of it, clean it all up, bead blast it, and see if I can make it operational. So here I am, kind of getting some lube on there so I can turn that base nut. That was the main thing, if I could get that. That wasn't frozen, so I'm just taking it all apart to get the glass bowl off of there. There's the gasket, the rubber gasket. It's actually in really good shape. Might be able to reuse that. There's the filter element. Now that spring looks like it's missing some of the spring. Might have just rusted away. And there's all kinds of sediment down in that bowl. It's like a lot of sediment. Now here we are back on the rig, putting the clutch master cylinder back in, giving that big cap nut a good cinch down. It's a lot easier to do when it's bolted to the firewall than trying to do it on the bench. Snugging up the main line goes to the clutch slave cylinder. That's a banjo fitting. Now cleaning a little rust off the firewall there to slide in the brake master cylinder. It's a brand new one. And it's an OEM. Brand new, exact duplicate of the original. And when you're sliding these in, that fork has to slide over the pedal under the dash inside. So if you get lucky and you get it perfectly lined up, it slides right over the pedal because it's aligned. Otherwise, if you have a buddy, you can be on the inside and guide it on. It would help, but mine both went right on. Well, I was able to find one of these fittings. I don't know if you remember, this nipple here broke right off of the hose. I don't know if it's the hose. Yep, there we go. Hose nipple just broke off. Still in there. And this is a straight thread, not a pipe thread. It has an O-ring right there. So you get this lined up where you want it, and then you tighten the nut up, and that seals up the O-ring. Hopefully. There we go. Might just plug that off for a while. It's summertime here in Southern California. I'm not going to be needing a heater for a while. Now, this is not a start attempt. There's no gas anywhere, anything like that. So I just want to see if the ignition works and if we get a click or a crank. So here we go. Well, that was promising. I have to put a little gas in that carburetor, see if it fires off. Well, how about that? The reason it was cutting out is because I didn't want to, I barely got the throttle hooked up, cracked open, but I didn't want to rev it up too high until I know it's got oil pressure. And so I was turning the key off, then I clicked the key back on to bring it back to life, and then key off again, and then it ran out of gas. All I did was fill the bowl up with fuel. So once that got down, I guess that's why it died. But wow, is that exciting? Can't even tell you. That's amazing. If that's not incentive to get going on this thing, I don't know what is. All right. Well, I hooked up the gas line and a few other things and tried to dial the throttle down a little bit. And I think I've got it safe to let it run for a minute if it wants to. Let's see what happens. Yeah, it's got a coolant leak over there on that heater hose fitting. It doesn't look like I got any flow through the radiator. So the thermostat's probably not opening up. And I don't think it's got a rod knocking. Yeah, I think we got enough information to process. Rod knocking, got a coolant leak over there. Gotta check the thermostat. I've got a new radiator. It was gonna go in the 73, but it can go in this if it needs it. Well, now I got a whole new set of stuff to check. It was also charging at almost 15 volts. Ammeter was pegged. Oil pressure was right where it's supposed to be at the first notch at the idle. So it's got oil pressure. Sounded like it was running on all 6. Sounded smooth except for the knock. Carburetor looked like it worked. Fresh overhauled carburetor there. So we got a little things to do. But all in all, it runs. So that was exciting, but now we got to check out, find out what that knock is. Well, this is quite the eventful episode, we'll say that. We got it running. It was kind of a spur of the moment thing. I was putting the master cylinders in and just tinkering around, and what was to keep me from at least just hooking the battery up and see if it'll crank over. And looked like all the wires were hooked up that needed to be hooked up, and lo and behold, it cranked over. So when that happened, I thought, well, you know, what'll it take to actually try to start it? So it only took a few minutes to get some gas in the bowl and turn it on, and she ran. So that was pretty exciting. Obviously disappointment on the knocking, but overall I'll take this as a good day. We'll work on that engine overhaul or do what we need to do, or maybe even swap it out with the spare F engine I've got over there. But anyway, we've got options, so stay tuned and we'll keep you posted. All right, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.